Good morning, and thank you for joining us again on these web chats which I have with Andy Marsh, Chief Constable. So I'm your Police and Crime Commissioner, Sue Mountstevens, and we have these regular conversations to try to give some clarity, some reassurance for you in these really challenging times. We've had so many changes over this last week. We have, so some of your children may have gone back to school. Some of you are will be starting next week as well. And that in itself changes the dynamics and I think has been quite confusing for many parents. We've had the introduction of the test and trace service and the changes in some of the regulations. So first of all, can I just say to parents, I do empathise a great deal with what you're going through, what you've been through over the past few weeks, with trying to explain to your children in these difficult times where maybe you haven't got a complete view of the picture, and to the children who are now going back to school. So I don't envy the role of parents in any way, shape or form, particularly if you're trying to work from home as well. So today, before we start, Andy, is there anything that you'd like to just say?
I think we're probably going to talk about events in America later, aren't we?
We are.
Yeah. So just in terms of what's happening with our COVID regulation enforcement activity, we've seen a real shift in emphasis and demands placed upon the police officers and staff that are out there now. I would say that during lockdown, we were spending probably most of our time responding to COVID-related concerns, thousands of them, and we were attending a significant amount of those concerns in person to deal with it. What we've seen is change in the regulations, a releasing of the lockdown measures, and that's seen a return to pretty much normal levels of crime and demand-related activity. So the officers and staff are busy with a lot of other stuff, including some very serious crimes, which they're investigating and responding to. And I would say that a significantly smaller amount of their time is spent responding to COVID concerns. And yet they are doing this with lower numbers because some people are shielding and working from home, and they're doing this from workplaces that we are working incredibly hard to ensure that they're COVID safe. But that's very difficult, as I'm sure anyone who runs a business or organisation will appreciate. And I would want to reflect this is difficult, but that the officers and staff that I've met and spoken to, and I've been out in police stations already this week and today, are doing so with a really positive attitude and a can-do mentality. But it's important to reflect that this is difficult when the public are wondering what we're doing about enforcing certain activities. And I think we're going to move on to what our role in enforcing those activities are in a moment. So.
Yeah, thank you, Andy. So last week the Prime Minister launched the test and trace service, which is, the aim is to obviously to stop the spread of the virus as much as possible. And we've heard that we might be contacted by the system if we've been in contact with someone who's been tested positive. So if people are told that they have to go into self-isolation and they choose not to, how will this involve the police?
So I come back to something I said a few weeks ago. This is a public health crisis. This is not a crisis which the police could indeed or should lead or respond to as the primary agency. So we're responding to expert medical advice and government changes and legislation. And during lockdown, we were able to benefit significantly from high levels of public compliance, and I would again want to express my gratitude for that. So. But to be clear, we have not got a role at present enforcing quarantine, whatever the quarantine is for. But let's remember why people will be asked to quarantine. They'll be asked to quarantine to control a virus which is deadly, which has taken many thousands of lives, and to control a virus that if we don't bring under control, we'll almost certainly go back into lockdown. And I don't think any of us want that. So the approach, as I understand it, is that we will be asking people to be public spirited and responsible and comply with requests to quarantine, but there will not be a police related enforcement role for that.
Okay, thank you for that clarity. So, the fact that we're now very careful when we're contacted by email or text about thinking that it might be a scam or some sort of issues because of the increase in fraud. How are we going to be careful that fraudsters don't get into this test and trace service, and so that they can contact us and maybe trying to find a way to rip us off?
Well, fraudsters will look to exploit any opportunity to gain financial advantage and take people's money away from them. One of the things that they need in order to have that advantage is trust. One of the ways in which they unsettle people to gain that trust is to put some fear into them. And so we know that a tried and tested way of doing that is when fraudsters contact people to say their bank account's been breached, when in fact it hasn't. Mm-hmm. So what we believe is that the fraudsters who continually adapt to opportunities that present themselves will look to unsettle people by pretending that they're from this track and trace agency. So this obviously hasn't happened yet because it's very early days, but let's get ahead of it. And so to be very clear on this, the NHS track and trace system will only use one phone number. I'm going to read the phone number out. It's 0300 0135 000. They will only use one website to advertise. That's www.contact-tracing.phe.gov.uk. So if you're contacted by anyone other than those means, they are not legitimate, and we would ask you not to trust them and discontinue the contact with them.
Thank you for that. And I think it's important, and I think we'll put that number on our website. So if you do get a query and you are concerned, you can go and have a look at the PCC's website, and we'll put it up there because I think that's really important.
And I think the internet link would be good as well. So because without doubt that link will have lots of information about ways in which the tracing system will work.
It's important, though, as you so rightly say, we've got to get in front, haven't we?
We have, yeah. So we're anticipating that they will take advantage and giving some sensible advice, hopefully.
Thank you. So the Prime Minister also announced further changes in the restrictions from Monday about being able to meet 6 people, that you can now meet them in the garden as opposed to just an open space. Again, what sort of role will the police have on getting involved when there are larger groups than 6?
So a much less of a role, I would say, in terms of enforcing these activities, because anyone that is out and about will see there are many more people out and about, and it is difficult sometimes to discern whether something might be legitimate or is not. If people are gathering in groups greater than 6, actually there is a likelihood that that's breaking the regulations and they'll be liable to a fine. So we're still being called to attend such incidents, largely in public, but the regulations apply in private places, gardens as well. So if you are gathering outside of the permission given, that's a maximum of 6 people, socially distanced, you can expect the police to challenge you. They'll engage you, they'll explain the regulations, they'll encourage you to comply. And if people are refusing, then enforcement is a final option. But I'm sure everyone listening to this will appreciate, given what I said right at the start, that we are incredibly busy with our routine business, that actually we have more and more of a limited time to be proactively enforcing these regulations. So the message comes back to, we won't enforce our way out of this problem of the virus, the pandemic. We will get through it because we stick together and we do our very best to show common sense, sound judgment, and stick to the regulations. And so I'm appealing to the public to work with us to help us get through this as quickly as possible.
And these health regulations, this is a health crisis, and we're doing it to protect ourselves.
Yes, it's about all of us.
Yeah.
And it is also about the people who I work with, the officers and staff, who have foregone their safety to carry on with their work. And so I would make an appeal to make their work as easy as possible by working with them.
Thank you. There's also been some confusion about inviting people into the home. So is it illegal for other householders, for other people to come inside your house?
The regulations don't allow for people coming inside your house. So the gatherings of up to 6 people socially distanced are for open air public places or gardens.
Okay. Would that be a breach?
It would, technically.
Okay.
But I mean, let's again, I ask people to use common sense, using a bit of common sense ourselves. We will not be going house to house to try and catch people in houses that they shouldn't be. The regulations are very clear on not being allowed to stay overnight at places other than your usual dwelling. There are certain exceptions, but because you're having a barbecue and you've drunk too much, that's not a reason you shouldn't build that into your planning.
Okay, thank you for that. And just before we finish, I just want to talk about the high-profile incident that we have seen in the States and the real tragic circumstances of George Floyd resulting in his death, and for which a police officer has been dismissed and has been charged with murder. We've seen from the television crowds of people being really angry and upset, and tensions are running high, I think, all over the world, really, as we continue to express our frustration and anger at the senselessness and injustice. And I'd like to always remember the words of Martin Luther King, who said that an injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. And I think it's for all of us to be aware of that it is for all of us to be able to say that it is unjust. I'm very thankful that in the UK, we have policing by consent, and this week we're celebrating National Volunteers Week, where members of the public come in and they work with us, with the police, work with my office, work with a whole range of charities and voluntary work, and in fact have got us through this last 10 weeks. People wanting to be part of that. But that policing by consent is really key. And we do have independent panels in Avon and Somerset where we look at the work that you do, that the police do, scrutinising the use of powers such as tasers and stop and search. So very different to the way that's happened in the States. But Andy, before we finish, as one of the most senior officers in the country, you've made a very clear statement. What made you want to say what you've done?
We police a very multicultural area in Avon and Somerset, and so we are everyone's police, but in an environment where we police by consent, and consent is the magic stardust of British policing. Actually, we must very preciously treat that. We have to have the trust of all of our communities. So as soon as I saw the video clip of what had happened in America, I knew that would cause great fear, anxiety, anger and concern, and many other emotions amongst our communities. And it's too simple a thing to say, well, it's America and it's very different to the UK. We are in a globalised society, and the word police cuts across every single country in the world. And what brought that home to me as soon as I saw the incident, the first time I saw it was my daughter pushed her phone across the table and said, "Look at this," and I could see how upset she was, because it said police, and she knows me. She's only ever known me as a police officer as well as her dad, and I could tell that, so young people, they see events worldwide and they attribute concern to events worldwide. As a police officer, I have to say at that moment I felt ashamed that I share the same occupation as the individual that caused that death. So I felt it was very necessary to express concern so that actually we can do our very best to protect the growing confidence that I believe our black and minority ethnic communities have in us in Avon and Somerset. I would imagine they expect me to say something about it. It's much more complex than simply saying something about it, though. People expect action, and certainly in my whole time as Chief Constable, I've done everything I can to build trust and confidence with all of our communities, and I see this as a key threat to how we do that. I hope in the coming days that there will be opportunities for police officers in Avon and Somerset to show their solidarity and support with all of our communities in different ways. I expect that. What I would say, though, is that I understand why people might want to protest. Indeed, they have a right to protest. But these restrictions are in place for very good reasons, to protect the health of us all. And we know that there are also disparities and inequalities in so many aspects of life, but also, as it happens, in terms of how COVID is impacting on our communities. So I would urge communities, if you want to express your unhappiness, let's reach out, let's talk, let's come together, but please do so in a way that protects your health through appropriate social distancing, and so that we can move forward and continue to make the improvements that we've made in trust and confidence between all of our communities and the police in Avon and Somerset, so that indeed we can be everyone's police.
Thank you for that. I know that you feel very passionate about this, and I think it's important that whatever we do, we keep ourselves safe. So I hope you found this useful, and until next time, stay safe. Goodbye.